Cleveland loses, but luckily, right now the Twins are losing as well. We will follow that game as the show is going on. We're going to talk about some things that Baltimore definitely has done better than Cleveland this year. We're going to get into the game, and we're going to talk about the unbelievable debut for Gunnar Henderson on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. I'm your host, Jeff Ellis. I'll tell you today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. For those who don't know me, I've been the host of Locked On Guardians since its inception, one of the OG podcasters on the MLB side of things. Before that, I was the elite draft and prospect analyst at Scout and 24/7, and now I am all of Locked On. Let's get out of the way at the start. I had some confusion. I know you're shocked. You know, if I'm going to brag when I get it right, the general rule is, the Kyren here is messing with me. I got to also own up when I get it wrong. And something I had wrong recently is reading comprehension. Can I blame this on being tired, disability, dyslexia, the echo chamber that is me saying something and people agreeing with me and somehow thinking that how I misread something is right? Long story short, Quan wouldn't be in year 3. He'd still be in year 2 next year. It would only apply to someone like Michael Harris for those who are like, what are you talking about? So in the Rookie of the Year, I somehow had read it as they would, because it says, and would be granted a full year. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, so they're granted a full year on top of what they had this year. There's no additional. What was missing. So it means, like, if Michael Harris wins for Atlanta, now he just signed an extension, so it doesn't matter. But he would, instead of being 3/4 of a year, he'd be a full year rookie. He would, he'd essentially be a Super 2 risk, which, Stephen Kwan is. That's why, honestly, they might want to consider of any player on this roster, because I don't think you're getting an extension done with Bieber. I honestly don't think you're getting one done with McKenzie. And, it was interesting because, I asked about Ahmed Rosario early in the week, and I had someone be like, let's just give him $9 million a year for the next 3 years, and then we buy him out that arbitration year and make the 2 years after that option years. He's not taking that. He is probably going to get $9 million in arbitration, so he has no incentive. He might get $10 million in arbitration. He is honestly probably looking at somewhere around $15 to $18 million a year. At his age, at his position, that's the going rate for a shortstop. I would be shocked if he got under $12 million. Like, even in a weak market, I'd be surprised if it's under 12. He's hitting at the right time. He's going to be, 28? Like, late 20s, hits the ball well, has good metrics, former top prospect. All those things count. Same reason when the Guardians acquired him, I said, he has as much, and there was talk about trying to immediately flip him. I'm like, no, because his value is not going to get lower. Yeah, he had a terrible 2020. His COVID season was awful, to the point that most of us thought that he was maybe like the fourth part of that trade. I don't know if I really thought he was the fourth part of that trade, because I was never very high on Josh Wolf, and I called him reliever at the time, and Isaiah Green wasn't my dude. He's been impressive in his on-base stuff, but I'm never going to be super high on that young player who's very far away. But the whole thing on Ahmed was, he has an elite physical tools. He's a former top prospect. If he continues to stink, the value isn't going to get any lower. But if he improves, the value might get higher. And honestly, in terms of Ahmed staying here, if he had started the year hot, I don't know if he's still here. Like, if he had a full season where he is, but that's been kind of his story, is he hasn't done that. He has not managed to put together, and very few players do. But just the start of the year was, like I said, it's like him and Miles Straw did a Freaky Friday. Having said that, should we talk about roster stuff? We'll talk about game in segment 2. But in terms of the roster, we know Cody Morris is already with the team. He's already traveling with the team. I got it wrong again. So second thing I got wrong. Again, like I said, I'm going to blow it up. Like, I'm going to give myself credit later when I talk about Gunnar Henderson. I got these two things very wrong, so I'm going to own up to it. Talking with Justin Latta, Cody Morris, because I originally thought that, like, you have to be on the Major League roster to qualify for the postseason. You have to be on the 40-man roster. So Cody Morris will qualify for the postseason roster if they choose to add him. No guarantee they will, but he's already up there with the team. I still would bet on Lavastida to be the other guy they call up. I haven't really dove into the Twitter weeds to see who is playing, who isn't playing, but Tito loves a third catcher. So if you're going to add 2 players, another pitcher, another catcher, and that's where my money is. I would love to see, everyone's like Will Brennan. I'm like, again, I like Will Brennan. He's a really good player. Him and Richie Palacios are less than a year apart in age. Brennan's had almost twice as many plate appearances. Palacios put up better numbers in the minors. Palacios is struggling in the majors. You know who put up the best numbers in AAA this year? Will Benson. I don't think it is a smart move to assume Will Brennan is all of a sudden going to turn into a 3-star center fielder. I guess I'm slipping into the OOTP here. By 3-star being, I never want a starter on my OOTP team who is below 3 stars unless it's like a very weird profile where it's like they're like a very high on base skill, lots of speed, average defense, no power at all. Like that's maybe where I have the 2.5 star, but I might be looking to platoon them. So nerdy. Sorry. Between like Dark Cloud 2 and some of the others, I'm just gonna start leaning into my nerddom. Start playing my Star Wars game on my phone that I play like way too much. There's some behind the scenes. People have responded well, so I'm gonna do more behind the curtain. But yeah, when you get into it, I don't think you can assume anyone. Again, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, Bobby Witt's coming around. I mean, Bobby Witt has arguably been as good this year as Ahmed Rosario. That's not what the expectation was, but that's certainly better than Torkelson and Green. Look at Nick Senzel. I would never naturally assume that someone like Will, and if you're saying, well, let's just call him up and see what he can do. You have so many outfielders. Let's see what Will Benson can do first. Let's actually see what Will Benson can do. Other than playing like twice a week. Let's give him a real opportunity. Because you need to start making choices, right? You need to start figuring out Palacios and Benson and Jones and Gonzalez. Because I'm not sitting back and saying Oscar Gonzalez is part of the 5-year plan with this team. I'm saying Steve Kwan is, but I'm not willing to go that level for any other player of the young ones we've seen. It's like Ahmed, number 1, off-season extension target. Number 2 is Kwan. Number 3, Triston McKenzie. Honestly, number 4, maybe Stefan, maybe 99. The other funny thing is people get mad at me about 99. There is some good data out there that shows that stuff is happening. Everyone wants to talk about the rosin and the sweat, and yeah, maybe that helps. I get leery with video game numbers. That's it. And I have a lot of other people being like, you see A, B, and D, or, you see A, B, and C. There's a lot of people out there. I am not of the sole belief. And people are like, they get checked every inning. Yeah, their hands get checked. if go watch some of the great, I'm sure you can find them on YouTube. And I remember like as a kid, I had basic cable. And I remember like there was a baseball show occasionally, and I can't even think of the name of it. But I remember like they had a whole segment with like Gaylord Perry and how you hide things. You can probably find that on YouTube now. Like there's smart guys figure it out. And again, the difference between pre and post is just so eye-opening that I think anyone who has a bit of a questioning mind has to be like, that's dramatic. So that's that point. But to get back to it, I think before we rush Brennan up, and it's not necessarily a rush up, it's more that like, let's actually see what we have. Let's figure out the logjam. Because we need to figure out the logjam, because it's a disaster. It is an absolute disaster. Can one of these guys play first? And I understand it's also a problem of like we have no right-handed bats in system. And Nolan Jones, I don't know if he's ever going to hit lefties. That's always been maybe his number 1 bugaboo. You look at the rest of those options. You look at someone like Brennan, who I believe, top of my head, is another lefty. I don't think they have any right-handed bats amongst their top prospects. Valera is another lefty who you're adding, who's already on the 40-man. It's just this series of corner outfielders, and you got to figure out who's the one. And Will Brennan's going to likely get added to the 40-man in the offseason, but they need to figure it out. Figure it out. We're going to take a break, come back, talk about the game itself on today's Locked On Guardians. Bet Online. I appreciate, I should go look on the Twitter, the one who's been telling me all of his like good bets, because I did say to let me know if you actually listen to any of my things where I'm like, oh, this is a good bet. And there's a few people have thrown their information towards me. The fact that Bet Online had the Guardians at 76 wins, man. We should have all been on that one. Listen to this show, make yourself some money, go over and check out Bet Online today. Bet Online has you covered. I always like to look at, I brought up on the show some of the fun stuff they do. I use them as a resource when I was scouting the draft to see how things are shifting. They have you covered for everything. If you can imagine it, they have it over at Bet Online. MMA, boxing, golf, political stuff. I've seen in the past you could bet on election results. Go to Bet Online today. That is Bet Online, where the game starts. So, and there's the so you know we're back. Is anyone else like really thrown off by these start times? So I get the alert on my phone and it's like, game's over. And I'm like, what? Because the 6:10 start for me is a 5:10 start. I had orientation for my daughter's kindergarten today. And when that's all done, I pick her up, get home, have dinner, start the bedtime routine. And before bedtime is done, this game is over. 4-0, Guardians lose. And I'm like, son of a... It is interesting. I need to pull up some quotes. It does sound like, in terms of me ranting about, let's see what we have, they're doing that. They are doing that. That they are going to sit back and see what they have with Will Benson. Some of the comments seem to think we're going to see more of Benson down the stretch in center field. And again, like I am the biggest Miles Straw defender around, but I don't know what you do with him. I don't have a good answer. And I know I'm supposed to be the expert, and I know many of you are like, yeah, you're no expert. It's fine. Hey, I hope we can be nicer about it though, dude. Or dudette. He's such a good defender. And for his career, he's been like a high 80s to mid 80s, which is like, about 15% below league average. And you take that with the defense because center field across baseball is difficult to find. It is difficult to find. So I keep hoping, but it's just like Franmil Reyes. It's like, how does this guy who has a history of hitting all of a sudden can't, and the Cleveland can't do anything to help him? Maybe, having a little bit of a rest will help him like focus and not tense up. But Quincy Wheeler at Quincy Wheeler1 had these quotes from Tito that I had missed, and Quincy had claims that he missed them at well. It's hard for me because I value what Miles does in center so much. I talked to him a little bit today, and he understands, he gets it. We'll try to do the best we can. And then on Benson, I don't know if I need to make lineups out for tomorrow. Let's just see how tonight goes. So it certainly does seem that we are going to see less of Straw, which a lot of people, I know, are rejoicing. I did see a few people be like, why? And it'd be interesting to see a platoon. Well, would it, right? Because Straw is a reverse platoon guy. So, he's a righty, but he hits righties better than lefties. So we're going to enter one of those great platoons where both guys can't hit lefties and both excel best against righties. The Cleveland Special, as I am going to call it. I have no problem with Straw being a late inning replacement because he's a top 5 defensive center fielder. I hate pinch hitting him, just bringing him in for no reason. I feel like giving someone like him one at bat is just doing him no service. Like he can't. What's really going to happen in that situation? Is he going to find any level? At the same time, hey, Benson has limited opportunities, but we also have to point out Benson has been less effective than Straw. Now Straw, again, it's not really a comparison. Benson needs to have one good game, and the number's going to go up. But in fairness, right now, Benson has struggled massively. And does Will Benson stay with this team in the offseason? What I mean by that is it like Justin Garza a year ago? Do you guys remember the Justin Garza situation where he pitched out of the bullpen because they didn't have a lot of great options? They rewarded someone who Justin Garza, by the way, they drafted out of high school and out of college, even though I believe he was hurt when they drafted him and knew he wasn't going to pitch. They liked him quite a bit, and they rewarded him last year. Now this year he hasn't sniffed in the majors. He may not again for the Cleveland organization. He passed through waivers. I don't know if Benson passes through waivers, but why did they do that? They had so many pitchers. They had to figure something out. Did everyone see that J.C. Mejia, I believe, got released recently in spite of being suspended for the roids? I think when everything was done, he was let go. Just bad for him. And the Brewers do a lot of things really well. They could have helped him, and feel bad for the kid. But he had so many outfielders. Are you going to hold on to all of them heading into next year? There's going to be some things to figure out. I mean, I'm very curious. He said Cody Morris. He's in Cleveland. He's still not out of the 40-man. Someone's going tomorrow. Who's going for Cody Morris? I don't think we know yet. I don't think we've seen who's the player that's getting taken off the 40-man. I think we assume it's Anthony Castro, who hasn't sniffed the big leagues in a while. He makes the most sense, but we'll have to wait and see. But to get back into this game today, let me just check our time. It was Baltimore's game. Jordan Lyles dominates the Guardians. We talked about Ciano Perez. Has been a good reliever for them. Batista has been excellent. Yeah, Felix Batista has been awesome for them. Ciano Perez, you can look at the FIP and see it's had a degree of luck, but they just dominated Cleveland. The offense couldn't put anything together, and McKenzie had an okay start. The reason I say it's okay is the 7 strikeouts is great, but 5 innings and you're already through 97 pitches. That's a lot of pitches, and it wasn't quite there. He allowed 7 base runners in 5 innings. That's a pretty high amount. He's actually lucky there was only 2 runs with that home run. It could have been a much higher rate overall. And if who reached base twice? Cleveland had Rosario and Jose, and then Palacios actually did because he had a hit and a walk. But there was a lot of offers in this game today, and Cleveland just could not put it together. And Jordan Lyles, 4.25 ERA. We talked about the fact that the staff in Baltimore has not been good. So, of course, Jordan Lyles just shuts Cleveland down, and you have to win these games. You just have to. You are, a 1-game lead right now in the wild card. If the Twins win today, it's a half-a-game lead. You could end up losing the series against Baltimore after losing the series against the Mariners and no longer being in first place. In a week, you could cough up a 4-game lead. A week. Cleveland's they got to do a better job. I don't think there's any way around it. It is, they build up all the momentum in the world. Everything was going well, and then it's we're gonna. And I think the worst part, okay, so you go back to that Seattle series. They could have won the first 2 games, and with the guys they had on the mound, they probably should have. Offense wasn't there. You come back and you look at, the Baltimore win the first game. The second game, and this game is like that Sunday game where it's they really never had a chance. These games are not that, they're not blowouts, but they're also not performing offensively and as a team, and they're getting so little that while it's not a blowout, and while McKenzie didn't pitch poorly, just like Zach Plesac didn't pitch poorly, it feels like it's a blowout, even though it's a 3 or 4 win game, because the offense does so little that you just, if that 3 to 4 runs feels like 20. And that's where we kind of are with this team right now, and there's just a lot of dead spots in the lineup, and that's it's an issue. I mean, you look at someone like Oscar Gonzalez. His last multi-hit game was August 20th. For the month, he's been solid, but that's, he's been kind of just solid, a little bit around average, which again, for an outfielder, you'll take. Rosario, we've seen the production slip, but he's still been solid. Quan has stayed slightly above solid. Jose, good. Not quite willing to go to great. Josh Naylor, we've seen some massive slipping in terms of his production. And we'll get into some of this in segment 3, just kind of looking at the offense in August. They were able to build up that lead, so the numbers aren't that bad, but there are some concerning trends kind of over the last 2 weeks. Are our guys tired? Our guys not used to this grind after some up and down years? We're going to get into it. We're also going to do our box score bingo and the 3 players of the game after a quick break on today's Locked On Guardians. Hey, make sure and do me a favor and check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview. If football is your thing, Locked On always has you covered. Whatever your sport, they got you covered. That is definitely something I believe strongly in. And I mean, that's like when I started, it was very much the Wild West. You can go through and be like, hey, I helped bring in Jason Burke and Nash Walker and a few other hosts. Like I brought in like 3 or 4 hosts back in the day. And they actually, like Nash then brought in a ton, so it makes me look even better. That's going to be my biggest accomplishment here on Network. But that wouldn't happen anymore. They go and get big names. Like someone asked me, like, hey, I'm blanking on the name. I apologize. Like, can I be a co-host? It'd be great on this. And I'm like, I don't have any control anymore. Like, there was a time where I might have been able to be like, hey, I brought in a co-host. This thing is such a big thing anymore. I get told a co-host will be. And again, I hope to have more information. I will say, like, there was a relatively big Cleveland name that was lined up to be my co-host, but they just had obligations in life, and I have no... and this isn't me, like, subtweeting former co-hosts. Again, I mean, listen, Pat's a fantastic writer. Caleb is runs the sports... he's like head of the interaction at a college for a sport. That's a busy job. And then I'm not going to blow anyone out of the water. I say it was a pretty big name in the Cleveland sports and podcasting community that nearly came on as a co-host, and they're busy. That happens. So I have another, let's put it this way. The person they were talking about to be my next co-host, if it comes through, is someone who has 10 times the Twitter followers I have. That is, that's the level they're going for now. I wouldn't get a job if this thing was starting fresh. So I hope no one takes offense. I've had a few people inquire, and when I've talked about Coast, and that's just the truth of it now. This is now big business. Let's do our box score bingo. Cleveland had 5 hits, 3 walks. That should be 2.5 to 3 runs. Nada. 1 extra base hit. That goes to Jose Ramirez in this one. Again, offense, just not putting it together. The other side of things, you had 3 walks, 8 hits, and an error, 12 runs. That should be 4 runs. Hey, that's what Baltimore got. Gunnar Henderson. So this is where I can pat myself on the back, right? Gunnar Henderson, what a debut. Now, if you go back to my draft class, I think I might have been the only person who gave him a first-round grade. I was very high on him. I actually, multiple times... Listen, if the Guardians had gone with my mocks and some of my redrafts, Alec Thomas and Gunnar Henderson would be Cleveland Guardians right now. Now, Triston McKenzie would not, but like I pulled out my thing. So here is my my write-up back in the day when I was still at Scout. This is a fantastic pick. I had Henderson 23rd on my big board and talked about how there was some Corey Seager to his game. The fact the Orioles were able to come back and add Henderson after getting Rishman makes this already a candidate for my favorite single draft this year. Henderson's power potential and youth really stood out as I dug into the young man from Alabama. I don't give grades, but A's all around for the Orioles right now. 23rd on my board. I was... And then from June 3rd, my Guardians mock draft pick. Gunnar Henderson was my pick in the mock. Kyren Paris and Brooks Lee also stood out for this pick as potential players. Man. That you can go look. June 3rd, 2019. So, listen, I pointed out when I bombed earlier, so I thought those were some kind of funny things to share on Henderson's debut. Okay, so I'm going to apologize. A little bit of a lost train of thought here. I did not want to record while the stuff in the basement was making loud noises. So we're going to take this moment, and now I believe I was talking about Gunnar Henderson. Gave myself my pat on the back. Let's move to the other thing that first let's give our 3 stars in this game, and then I'm going to move into what the offenses look like in August. Listen, I've said it before, you give up 2 earned runs through 5 or 6, you're going to be one of the 3 stars. Not, again, McKenzie's sharpest performance on the year, but still solid. I think you have to give one to Jose. 2 hits and the only extra base hit in this one. And then I think you have to give the other one to Ahmed, who had 2 hits as well. Part of me is tempted to give it to Palacios for the hit and the walk, having reached base twice. If you'd done anything to just make him stand out, if he had the outfield assist or anything of the like, I might have gone with him in this situation. Again, I didn't get to watch this one, being very honest about that. Part of me wonders when I look over here at the 2 double plays, I'm like, were those both Ahmed Rosario? Okay, so let's talk about August production. In terms of production in August, Andres Gimenez has 161 runs created plus. He's been worth 1.3 WAR. He's been the team's best hitter in August. He hasn't let up. He has not let up. At some point, I thought these extraordinarily high BABIPs are going to level up, and they will level out at some point, but my goodness. Lock the man up. Lock the man up. He needs to be part of this team's core. This is just, it's very, and I talked about before the season began, but I also said he's not going to be Jose, but he had kind of a build-up that was eerily reminiscent of Jose coming through the minors. Number 2 hitter in August, Steven Kwan, 143 runs created plus. He had 309, 400 on base, 436 slugging, worth 0.9 WAR. Both of them. Kwan's defense is average by Fangraphs. Gimenez, a plus defender. Number 3, I know I'm still not sure what to make of Oscar, and that's just the truth of it. And that's going to be continually the truth. Negative defensive value, 3.1% walk. The second highest strikeout rate on the team, K percentage at 22.7. 362 BABIP. He had a 298 batting average. Again, just like at some point, Andres is likely to see like a 60 to 80 point drop. So was Oscar. So that's a concern because that's going to take out a big chunk of his value because while there was some flare-ups with power, it's still not showing quite as much as I expected for him because that was his calling card throughout his time in the minors. 4th best hitter in August, Jose Ramirez, 113 runs created plus. 7.3% walk rate, not as good as it was earlier. The K percentage, only 11.8. Highest ISO during this time, had the most home runs in the month. Had a 253 BABIP, so unlucky. Part of that is because he became the pop-up king. And let's see, across his base running has a negative value, which you almost never see. He's always typically been one of the best base runners in baseball. Good defensive scores, been worth 0.6 WAR, same as Oscar. Next, Amed Rosario's at 93, and we've talked about the ups and downs of Amed. Right now, it's that's still in the average range. But when he's been like over 110, when he's been over 10% better than league average, and now he's getting close to that 10% below league average, that's a dip because he also has the negative defense. But still 93, more than acceptable. Austin Hedges at a 77, I will take. He's got a 12% walk rate, a 14% K rate. I mean, that's certainly an acceptable number, and the second highest defensive value on the team. Highest defensive value belongs to Miles Straw. Next up, Owen Miller at a 61. That's right, a 61. The month of August, Josh Naylor. 205 batting, 269 on base, 289 slugging for 55 runs created plus. Worst defensive value on the team. The worst base running value on the team. And the second worst hitter, Miles Straw, at a negative 45, which I've just never seen. But the fun thing is, like, again, it's the base running is very high. The defense is very high. If he could just get back to old Miles Straw, be like an 85, think about that. Instead of a negative 45 and 8, like how much better the offense would be. One of the big things, like Josh Naylor has been this team's like cleanup hitter. He has been the guy there. The Guardians honestly have to consider shifting this lineup. Gimenez should be hitting 4th. He's been your best hitter most of this year. Jose has been great. At the start of the year, he was amazing. Since, if we went back, from May to now, best hitter on this team is Andres Gimenez. He should be hitting 4th, not 6th. You want to get him as many plate appearances as possible, and you want to get him up there when guys like Rosario, Jose, and Kwan are getting on base. Having him down that far in the order is just, it makes no sense to me. That's my one rant. Moving on. Oscar should say 5, and right now Naylor should be your 6. He is struggling, and it is showing in performance, and it's part of the thing that's really shifted because, listen, the bottom of this lineup has been a mess. The catcher has been a mess. Now it's better. Listen, Miles Straw has been, like I said, historically awful. The DH position has been all over the place. Mostly it has been a black hole, sucking all the light out of this team. Problem is, with the top, we had those, there was the 6 guys at the top. Now it's been 5 because Naylor is really kind of, now, again, he came back from that injury very quickly, quicker than most people expected. Could he be worn out? Could it be the rigors of playing in the field? Could it be a number of things? Listen, we know the league to a degree, like Jose, again, he's still 113 runs created plus. That is very good. Is it star level? No. because the entire league knows throw Jose nothing but changeups, because it's the one pitch that he can't hit for whatever. Like, guys who don't have changeups throw a changeup when they face Jose Ramirez. I gotta look at the data, really dig in and see what the league has figured out Josh Naylor in a big bad way, and it's been a big struggle for him over the last month. If we go back to July, like say he's a 55 now, if we just add in his July data and we talk about Naylor's at a 109. It's just this month of August has completely leveled him. By the way, number one during that period, still Andres Gimenez. Number two, Luke Maile since July with a 144 runs created plus. Maybe we should let him play more. Positive defensive value. But then it's Juan, Gonzalez, Jose. Naylor is ahead of Rosario because he was good in July. August has just been brutal for him. Let me know what you think. Hit me up at Jeff MLB Draft. We're going to continue to try to figure out what's going with this team because, they were on such a great run against good teams, bad teams, but they've had these little hiccups. The 2 series against Detroit, the Seattle series that really could have gone either way. We'll see how the Baltimore series, we'll talk about the rubber match tomorrow, but, they're so close, and they're then finding ways to lose. And there's just enough holding them back. They could have a monstrous lead in this division instead of a game and a half. Minnesota, valiant comeback to 6-5. But thank goodness, thank you, Boston. We're going to end it there. Thank you all for listening. Remember, rate and review, download daily. It helps. Subscribe on the YouTube. We're at almost 600 subscribers. Very close as we move up. I think I'm under 20 away. And as I end every show, go Guardians, go.